give you a good example. I was looking a lot of on YouTube the other day about all the CEOs that are talking about how AI is bad and how it could go rogue and how and again, I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence. My expertise is on human behavior. And one of the things that I notice is that a lot of these CEOs are talking once they don't belong in the system on the corporation they worked in. So one thing I analyze, you can see how during the time they were working in these companies, they weren't brave enough to give up their comfort for their conviction. But now, after reassuring that they're going to be okay, reassuring that, their life and the life of their loved ones are going to be okay, now they're talking freely. But this is where we also see these masks. Is this a mask they're wearing also to portray that, well, I am the good guy now? But when I had the opportunity to really make an impact with artificial intelligence, I decided my own comfort. And it's understandable because, if you're a father, if you have kids, you'll also think about like, hey, something, what am I going to do if I leave this job? Are my kids going to go to school? Am I able to pay my mortgage? Am I able to, have the lifestyle that I have? And this is where we wear those masks. And I'm pretty sure if these individuals, these CEOs already had in their mind that this was bad, they were wearing a mask to fit in, to be okay with what's not okay. But this is where we also think we have to think about the ethics and the morals and your values. Are you willing to be true to yourself and give up your comforts for your convictions? And this is what separates leaders from heroes. And this is one of the things I definitely was looking at, is that there's very little heroism in our leaders today. And yes, we have a lot of understanding about leadership, servant leadership, how to manage, how to do many things. But yet we lack the true value of heroism, of doing the right thing when it really matters. But why we do this, it's understandable. We always want to be okay and good. And because of that, we put all these masks. But what happens when you don't wear a mask and you are yourself? Let's look at if these CEOs would have making that decision and gone rogue and went public talking about the dangers and being truthful to themselves about the dangers of AI. What would these companies have done to them? They would have retaliated. They would have probably ended their career. But also the judgmentalism provoked by all of the ones that oppose the idea that this was dangerous. So are we mentally prepared to make these fair, unpopular decisions that stand for truth? In order to do that, we have to be very self-secure and self-sufficient and understand also the repercussions that come with making these heavy decisions. One of the people that I admire the most, it must be Muhammad Ali, that stood for his convictions and gave up all his comfort. He was stripped from his, boxing world title for over 5 years because he stood against the war in Vietnam. And I admire the fact that he did it when it really mattered, when there was a lot at stake. There was a lot at stake. And this man, not only because of his convictions, but also the idea of murdering others. He knew that wasn't right, and that wasn't in his heart. And he didn't want to wear a mask to pretend that he was America's hero by going and being deployed, being drafted at that time against his own will, which is the funniest thing. But being drafted to go and hurt other people and kill them or being killed. He understood that that wasn't the way, and that he would prefer to be in jail but feel free, although he will be incarcerated. And when I talk about freedom, is emotional freedom, psychological freedom, being able to sleep with a very empty conscience that he did the right thing, regardless of what the popular demand believes. And this is where we also fall short as a society. We fall short as a society because, unfortunately, we want to wear all these different personas that are just so empty to us. Just look at social media. Social media is all about different personas. It's almost like everyone is lying to one another, pretending to be who they want to be portrayed as. But in reality, think about it. Even those that get interviewed or those that are here, how do we behave when we are alone in our thoughts, when we are sensitive, when we're vulnerable, or also when we're confident and when we think that we can accomplish everything. We have that fortitude inside. How many times do we project our inner self in a real persona, a real mask that represents us? In order to do that, you have to be very brave, and you need to be okay with yourself, regardless of the criticism, regardless of the different points of view, but also going through these stages. That information that comes in from the criticism of others is also to recollect the ones that are constructive and dissect that information correctly so you can grow. Because every criticism is just more data. And if we are mature enough to understand that criticism is data, then we can actually select and analyze which one is going to be useful and which one is not. And if we're able to do that, think about the endless possibilities of growth if you collect feedback to create self-awareness of yourself, because that's exactly what needs to transcend in order to have a right persona about yourself. It's to really be self-aware of who you are, your reality, your possibilities, your options, and also your projections. And what risks should you take in order for you to grow? These are things that are so important to have a real identity of ourselves and to have the proper mass and personas that are balanced, that are not extreme, that are not radical. Because as we know, everything that is extreme is bad, and we want to avoid that. And this brings a lot of mental health issues later. If you live a life pretending to be someone you're not, what happens is when you wear all these personas and all these different masks to fit in with society, you start retaliating who you really are, and you start constructing and building up a lot of hidden emotions, and you start to hide your true self behind this mask. And what happens is you start to disassociate. At some point, you accumulate so much in your shadow that it implodes. And it implodes in a way where you cannot resist the fact that your identity, where does it really reside? On what you want to believe you are, or what you resent about yourself? And when I mean resent about yourself, I mean what you try to avoid, what you try to put to the side, what you don't show off. I'm trying to coexist. Yeah.